When you've got a lot to do, the temptation is to knuckle down and put as much time as possible into those critical tasks. But I'd argue that it's actually better to look at optimizing your energy levels rather than trying to optimize the amount of time that you have available. The idea of energy management is that when you are at your peak alertness, you can get a lot more done than when you are feeling flat and sleepy. Also, different types of work require different types of energy. You might have some clerical work, which just requires that you don't fall asleep. Whereas if you have some highly creative work, that requires a completely different type of energy. And you can actually fit the type of work that you have in your day according to when your energy levels are going to be at their maximum or minimum. That correlates to the idea of chronotypes, which is the concept of mapping out when in your day you have the most energy. Everyone has these peaks and troughs of energy, and it's a little bit different for everyone. So you want to figure out what your chronotype is. The reason why managing energy is important is because time is limited, but we can alter our energy levels. There are a lot of things that we can do, exercise, nutrition, sleep, in order to make sure that we are actually operating at peak energy levels. When we're at our peak, we can actually get a lot more done. I find that the times where I am energized, I'm able to blast through activities that might have taken me hours to get through normally. I also find that work is more fun when I'm well rested, I've done some exercise, and I'm generally feeling cheerful. Whereas if I'm not optimizing my energy levels, work can feel like a drag, and it's just not particularly enjoyable. There are a number of ways that you can optimize your energy levels. First of all, knowing your chronotype, then optimizing your sleep, nutrition, and exercise, as well as paying attention to ultradian rhythms. Let's start with chronotypes. You might be familiar with this stereotype of larks, owls, and middlebirds. That was out of some research indicating that some people are morning people, and they are these larks where they wake up and they jump out of bed and they have heaps of energy, and then they want to go to bed early because their energy flattens out in the evening. And then you've got owls where they feel pretty sluggish in the morning, but as the day goes on, they have more and more energy. And then middle birds where it's somewhere in the middle. Those stereotypes haven't necessarily been backed up with modern research. There's this paper in 2021 out of a Russian university indicating that there might be as many as 8 different chronotypes. And I saw another one where they chart it on a 3-dimensional plane. The point here is that there are different types of people, and it might be that your office, maybe your manager is more of a morning person and they get in super early, but you're not, and that's okay. Just as long as you are aware of when your energy is at its peak, you can schedule tasks according to when you're going to have the most energy. And if you monitor your energy levels over time, you'll be able to figure out what your chronotype is. Part of what influences chronotype is how we sleep. It can be that it seems like you are an evening person, but that might actually just be because you have been developing a bad habit of using a lot of screens in the evening and not getting enough sleep, and then you don't feel great in the morning. But it could be that if you optimize your sleep, then you would do quite a lot better at the start of your day. I find that for me, it's important that I can wake up without an alarm so that my body gets the amount of sleep that it needs. On some days, I wake up after 8 hours. Other days, if I've done a lot of exercise or I've had a lot of stress, my body needs a little bit more sleep. And because I try to go to sleep at 9:30 p.m., and then I'll wake up, depending on the day, between 5:30 a.m. and 6:30 a.m., depending on my body's needs. That is much better than if I am setting an alarm and I'm waking up and potentially feeling not great. The other thing that is important is being able to get through the day without having to rely on external substances. Because if you are a bit like I was 10 years ago, where I was smashing 10 cups of coffee a day, that's really not a good cycle, and it tends to, I find for me, it has side effects. So it's great if it's possible to fuel your energy levels mainly through sleep and high quality nutrition. I find that when I get enough sleep, I have easy sustained focus throughout the day. It's not an effort, and I'm not having massive troughs of energy. Having said that, it's natural for me and for most people to have a desire to sleep in the afternoon. In fact, there's some evolutionary research suggesting that humans evolved needing to sleep in the afternoon because that's when UV radiation was at its peak, and we might be at risk of dehydration if we were highly active in the afternoon. So having a short power nap, up to 20 minutes, is perfectly okay. Just don't make it too long, because otherwise you end up feeling groggy. And the other thing is try to avoid stimulation, which might be watching stimulating TV shows. It could be watching a horror movie late at night. Probably not a good idea for optimizing your sleep. And similarly, eating a big meal in the evening is not great because your body will find it hard to get to sleep when you're digesting food. Speaking of food, one thing that you want to be careful about is glucose spikes, which are triggered by eating foods which are high in simple carbohydrates. We're talking about lollies, sweets, bread. Anything that has a lot of flour or sugar in it that's highly processed is probably going to result in a spike in energy and then a crash. It's much better if we can have sustained energy rather than these peaks and troughs. You might also find that certain foods, you're intolerant to them and that they lead to a dip in energy. I'm gluten intolerant myself, and I find that if I eat anything containing gluten, I shortly afterwards have a lot of brain fog and real inability to focus. I discovered that by doing an elimination diet, and that's something that you can do as well if you feel like certain foods may be impacting your ability to focus. In general, eating a big meal will result in your body having more blood flow to the gut so that it can digest, and less to your brain. So you might want to avoid having a heavy meal in the middle of the day when you're wanting to focus. Or if you do, go for a walk afterwards, because that can help to increase the blood flow to your brain again. And finally, look out for vitamin or nutrient deficiencies. I, at one point, was iron deficient, and I found it very hard to be able to focus during that time when I was anemic. I really had quite low energy until that was addressed. And there are a number of different nutrients which are essential for our ability to focus. In terms of exercise in the morning is a great way to start the day. It tends to have positive impacts on our ability to focus throughout the rest of the day. I like going for a run in the morning or doing a HIIT workout first thing. The other thing that works well for me is doing micro workouts or exercise snacking. That's the idea of doing short bursts of exercise, perhaps 30 to 90 seconds throughout the day. I find that when I do that, I have much more sustained energy levels compared to if I don't do that. I often have a really pronounced late afternoon dip in energy. However, one thing to be careful about is exercising late at night. That tends to result in your body not being able to get to sleep. There's also the concept of ultradian rhythms. There's evidence suggesting that it's very hard for humans to be able to concentrate for more than 90 minutes maximum, and even 90 minutes can be hard. Beyond that, you start really having a dip in energy, and you may actually get negative productivity because you're starting to get tired and you might make mistakes. That's why it's so key to take regular breaks throughout the day. One thing that Focus Bear can help with is reminding you to take breaks, and also potentially reminding you to do micro workouts or have some exercise snacks. You can see here I'm being prompted to do some Superman, as well as rating my mood and my energy level so that I can keep track of what my chronotype is like. Feel free to give Focus Bear a go or use a similar tool to remind you to take breaks regularly. I'll leave you with this thought that energy management is far more important than time management and a lot more within your control.